This is a podcast from Duncan Cartlidge Online, the online resource for all construction professionals that's available 24/7. Please don't forget to subscribe to the place you usually get your podcasts so as not to miss a thing in this second series, as well as visiting our YouTube channel. Hello again and welcome to another podcast from Duncan Cartlidge Online. As usual, Barney, my red Labrador, is here to offer advice and to keep an eye on proceedings. And by the way, we would really appreciate it if you could write a review. As this is the first podcast of a new year, may Barney and I take this opportunity to wish you a happy, healthy and prosperous 2025. If you're new to Duncan Cartlidge Online podcasts, welcome. Please don't forget to subscribe, as well as catching up with previous episodes. If you are already a subscriber, thank you for your support. In this first episode for 2025, we'll have a look at attracting people of all backgrounds and identities into the professions and construction more widely, construction fraud, when will we ever learn, and to finish, the year ahead, surviving 2025. So, let's start off with trying to attract more people into construction. The RICS has a new president, Justin Sullivan, but with the same old message. There is a massive skill shortage in construction, including built environment professionals. The new RICS president may well be passionate about tackling the shortages, but without any suggestion as to how this problem can be solved. You may recall that in 2024, the RICS carried out an inquiry into the pathways and entry routes into the surveying profession. The outcome of the inquiry is due to be published in the next few months, and it will be interesting to learn what the inquiry recommends. When published, the report will be discussed in detail in a future podcast. I just hope the recommendation is not dumbing down, and, whatever the outcome, it will be interesting to learn how it will address the problem of tempting Generation Z to work on cold, muddy construction sites. Certainly the Labour Party solution, which talks about rolling up sleeves, jump-starting careers, galvanising businesses and boosting growth, but without any detail as to how this will be achieved, is like so much of the NT rhetoric of late. Watch this space. And now, moving on to the sensitive topic of construction fraud. When will we ever learn? In December's podcast, I touched on the infamous Paulson affair of the 1960s and the impact it had on suppliers and clients. For many years, Paulson bribed his way to securing mainly housing contracts at a time when there was a housing shortage. 60 plus years later, it appears construction still hasn't learned. During the last weeks of 2024, Keltbray, a large demolition contractor, lost its appeal in a £60 million fine imposed by the Competition and Markets Authority for being part of a cartel who operated a bid rigging organisation. Had Keltbray swallowed the pill and paid the fine, they would have received a 20% discount for settlement. The arrogance of Keltbray in lodging an appeal is staggering, as it was caught bang to rights along with 9 other companies operating bid rigging over a number of years on large public sector contracts. When tenders were requested for a new contract, one contractor would be selected by the cartel to be the winner, while the losers would receive compensation payments, in some cases of more than £500,000. So, what is bid rigging and cover pricing? Incidentally, both of which constitute fraud. Bid rigging is where bidders create the illusion of competition while secretly agreeing which of them will win the tender. This drives up prices and leads clients to paying over the odds. For example, 3 bidders collude and between themselves agree that one will bid 2 million, another 2.2 million, and the third 2.4 million. The job goes to the bidder with what looks like the lowest bid, £2 million, but competition never took place, and of course the price could have been lower if the contractors had been genuinely competing to win the contract. Now, this practice is not confined to small organisations desperate for work. In the recent past, many household names have been found to be players in bid rigging cartels. Cover pricing, on the other hand, is where one or more bidders in a tender process submits an artificially high, or, in some cases, caveats and qualifications that effectively make the bid unacceptable. Cover bids are priced so as not to win the contract, but are submitted, as far as the clients are concerned, as genuine bids, which gives a misleading impression as to the real nature of competition. This distorts the tender process and makes it less likely that other, potentially cheaper firms are invited to tender. The usual reason given by contractors and subcontractors for not coming clean and rejecting a request to be on the tender list is the fear that, if they refuse, they will not be considered in the future, especially in the case of a good client where there is prospect of future work. Now, how true this is, I don't know, or whether it's just an excuse to justify dodgy practice. Of course, there may be several perfectly legitimate reasons why contractors or subcontractors can't accept work, including lack of resources. Also, accepting work without the necessary resources could lead to delays and overspending. Surely, is there not a case for industry groups to issue guidelines to contractors, clients and subcontractors in cases where they are unable to submit a tender in order that relationships are not trashed and the law isn't broken? In addition, advice could be incorporated generally into procurement practice. So, what makes construction such fertile ground for fraud, and why is it always at the top of the corruption league tables? It's a bit like a perfect storm. Firstly, there can be huge sums of money involved in construction projects, and many interfaces where money changes hands. Secondly, the supply chains are highly complex, so it's easy for anomalies to be buried in the detail of, for example, a tender reconciliation, or even deliberately hidden. Checks, balances and decisions in construction are widely distributed at a local level, making them more fragmented and harder to track than in other procurement-intensive industries, such as car manufacturing, for example. And finally, the pace and intense time pressure of construction projects means it's not always easy to make time for rigorous background checks. Before we leave the question of dodgy procurement practice, the Competition and Markets Authority has announced that it is currently investigating another case of bid rigging. Last month, the agency announced a new bid rigging probe relating to the Department of Education's Condition Improvement Fund, which is awarded annually to schools with buildings in poor condition. After unannounced inspections of several businesses, the CMA said it is believed that a number of firms providing roofing and construction services, including contractors and technical advisors, were illegally colluding to secure contracts. And finally, the year ahead. What are my predictions for 2025? 2024 was punctuated with talk of AI and digital input into construction. I recently came across a couple of quotes in Building magazine from a rather smug-looking AI expert. The first quote is, "By the 2040s, AI will have transformed the engineering and architect professions in ways that are hard to predict." Just think about that for a while. Just as well we have experts, isn't it? And the second quote was, "Most of our current jobs will change in the next 5 to 10 years. Anything we currently do on a screen can and eventually will be automated. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm no Luddite, but is it me, or is this typical of the nonsense that preceded the rolling out of BIM 10 years ago? Construction is a large and diverse industry with a wide range of actors. Should we not be setting our sights lower and introducing systems that people at the coalface can relate to and offer some tangible benefits to increase productivity? We only have to look at BIM, the one-time silver bullet saviour of construction. At a recent CIOB event, Paul Morell, the construction government advisor at the time BIM was introduced, admitted that BIM had stalled, due in part to some government ministers pitching the entry level too high. Reasons cited by industry for the poor uptake of BIM is typically lack of skills and expense. But, in a strange twist of fate, the Competition and Markets Authority referred to previously is reported to be trialling the use of artificial intelligence in an effort to tackle big rigging. The watchdog has piloted a new tool which uses AI to scour large-scale data to identify which public procurement markets are at significant risk of corrupt practice. According to the head of the CMA, they now have the capability to be able to scan bidding data to spot anomalies in bidding and to identify areas of potential anti-competitive conduct, and it is proving to be quite successful. The target of building 1.5 million houses during the current Parliament will be ditched. Let's face it, we are already halfway through the first year of Labour's term. It will be interesting to hear the reasons why. Alongside this is the failure to invest in innovation and skills in an ever-widening skills gap. There are just over 2 million workers in construction, 5% lower than a year ago, and the lowest level this century. To deliver the homes and infrastructure the country needs, the Construction Skills Network estimates the industry needs another 250,000 new construction workers by 2027. Where are we going to find these? How will we attract talent to our industry? Perhaps the new RICS president has the answer. The introduction of modern methods of construction stalled last year, with many companies pulling out of the market or going into receivership. Factory overheads, a lack of a secure pipeline, inflationary pressures, and a shortage of skills and expertise have all been identified as contributing factors to the lack of progress in the MMC sector in the UK. Alongside this, risk aversion on the part of warranty providers and insurance companies, and insufficient clarity for building regulations. Even the larger volumetric builders are struggling to stay afloat, and there is no sign of any new money coming in to steady the ship. The Construction Playbook acknowledges the need for government clients to harmonise, digitise and rationalise demand and adopt Design for Manufacture and Assembly, or DFMA, as used in other sectors to increase efficiency. The system uses platforms, commonly used in manufacturing, and in a construction context, it refers to a process whereby sets of components or assemblies are mass-produced and put together in a multitude of ways and across multiple building types. For example, a single component could be used as part of a school, a hospital, a prison or a station. However, achieving such a high degree of standardization is a big ask for a sector that typically treats each building project as a one-off. It's understandable why, given the following stats, that there is a call for increased productivity. Data from the Office for National Statistics indicates that output per construction worker stands at around £36 per worker per hour, some 13.5% behind the UK average. In a recent RICS productivity survey, more than 1 in 5, 22% of respondents in the UK construction industry, said they never even measured labour productivity. Can you imagine that in any other sector, let alone one as big as important to the national economy as construction? Not measuring productivity? Don't forget that construction contributes approximately 7 to 8% of the UK's GDP. It has been blatantly obvious for ages that productivity in construction lags behind other sectors. But will AI and digital intervention solve the problem? Answers on a small postcard, please, to... Not for the first time, there have been calls to reform the economic model, as the industry needs to change the system that incentivises contractors to race each other to the bottom. A system that allows some Tier 1 contractors to hold on to payments, pushing the supply chain into financial hardship, and that fails to create sustainable margins that will enable investment in the skills, innovation and research and development that is needed to take the industry forward. A business model with a main contractor managing an ever-growing chain of small suppliers is inefficient. It drags down productivity and fails to incentivize investment in skills and innovation. Unless the industry moves forward, we will remain stuck in the same unsustainable cycle, waiting for the next Carillion or ISG, and failing to deliver the homes and infrastructure our country desperately needs. This time next year, will the industry be in a better place? Well, that's all for this episode. I hope that you found it interesting, if a little depressing. Thank you for listening to the end. This has been a podcast from Duncan Cartlidge Online. Thank you for listening. Barney and I would really appreciate it if you were to subscribe, and if you have time, write a review. Until next time, take care.